Hello and welcome to the Pirates podcast to be named later here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. My name is Alex Stumpf. I'm flying solo this week. Anytime the Pirates go out to the West Coast, it just makes it difficult to, you know, link up with Eddie and do a proper show. So I'm flying solo this week. This is I believe, the last West Coast trip of the year. So don't have to worry about it anymore after this. This is the last time, which is good because it's been a lot of West Coast baseball the last couple weeks. Between the All Star game and this series in Anaheim, and they're going down to San Diego. But then that's it. The rest is no worse than the Central Time Zone. I can take that. I want to talk about something that this isn't trade deadline week quite yet, but I want to talk about the trade deadline this week because next week it's going to be so much more. We've heard blank connected to blank. We've heard this, we've heard that. And let's just take it a different way here. And I want to just say something different. And maybe you guys can remember from other shows, old episodes from like a year ago, whenever I made this point. And it's not my most original take, but I think this is the best year to summarize it, or that it really applies here. Because last year I said, you don't need to sell. The Pirates don't need to sell at the trade deadline, knowing darn well that Jose Quintana was going to get traded. We all knew Quintana was going to get traded. It did bring back Jan Oviedo, who has his ups and downs, but I think overall anyone can say, yes, that's a major league pitcher. That's someone that, you can put on your staff, and he even has the potential to be a good starter if he could just, keep away out of those like Jekyll and Hyde innings where, like we saw in the fourth inning on Friday, whenever that slider just went away and that was it. So, but he is a major league pitcher. I I said a lot of things with Jose Quintana, being like, you don't know where those innings were coming from. You don't know where the veteran leadership is going to be coming from. There's just like a long list of things that it just didn't work out well, from a logistics. Other than the pure baseball of Quintana for 2 months for 5-6 years of Oviedo is a good trade. I get that. I want to apply it to this year though, because the Pirates are in once again that same. You don't really have enough pitching, or the pitching is very thin at the moment. So what do? Well, you put Rich Hill out on the trade deadline. And I get the whole. You want the guy to play for a competitor. You want to bring in young, controllable talent. There's a lot of baseball reasons for everything. But, and this is a big but, this isn't Jose Quintana. Rich Hill has eaten innings. He's been a great guy in the clubhouse. He's been the veteran leader. He's done all the things that this team really expected him to be whenever he came in. And that's great. That's the Pirates brought him in with certain expectations. He has met those expectations. That doesn't mean he's going to have a lot of trade value. Because let's be honest here, Rich Little is probably Rich Little. Wow. That's an obscure comedian. Speaking on my part. Rich Hill is going to be a playoff team's fifth starter. Let's be honest here. If even that. He is probably not going to get the ball in a do or die playoff game as a starter. Teams are not going to give up a lot for Rich Hill. Teams are not going to give up a lot for Carlos Santana. Carlos Santana is been one of the biggest clubhouse leaders this entire year, especially whenever it comes to the young Latin players. They really look up to him. He's been great for all of that. Production-wise, it's been middling. The Pirates, I still like where their mindset was with the, get a lot of guys who were overly shifted and see if, that reconnects or that readjusts with the new shift rules. I kind of wrote that was probably only going to be a handful of hits anyway, and we've kind of seen that. He still had an OPS like in the low 700s, so it's not like it's really taken off or anything. Here's a guy who's an average bat at first base or DH, positions that you traditionally want an above average bat. So he's a defensive player. Again, great guy in the clubhouse. Some team will give something up for him, same way that some team will give up something for Rich Hill, but you're not going to get back big time prospects. You're not going to get back a Johan Oviedo even. So it comes down to what is better for this organization going forward. Is it to accrue a few more 40 future value prospects, guys who are going to be fourth or fifth outfielders or utility men or relief pitchers? Or is it to ride out this fourth year 4, and try to salvage as many wins as you can get down the stretch? And make sure that clubhouse does not get listless like it did September 2022 clubhouse, whenever a lot of people were hurt and a lot of people were traded. That was about as bad a Pirate clubhouse. Okay, I covered 2019. I guess I can't say that, but it was listless. There were a lot of people in there that were just ready to cross the finish line for the year, and you can't go into that. You can't have that again. Not in year 4. And I'm going to keep stressing over these last 2 months of the season, 2.5 months, year 4. This is year 4. Not saying there was an explicit 5-year plan, but year 4, you expect to see those opening steps, those first steps of becoming a competitive ball club. And that was very much the case in April. But ever since the calendar turned to May, no, they don't look like they are any better than they were last year. From May to this point in July, they have pretty much played like the same 100-loss team that we saw in 2022 and 2021, and what would have been 2020 if they would have had a full season. And that's not good enough for year 4. It's just not. You have to show something tangible growth. I said all along, low 70s wins. And yeah, that's still a disappointment after what they did early on in April. But that's still, if they finish 72 and 90, it's still a 10-game improvement. That's still a good chunk of the way to becoming a competitive ball club. How do you get there? Do you get there by having another random 40 future value prospect in the system? We're already at a point pretty much where we're starting to see guys who are promising prospects start to get DFA'd because there's just not enough room. Travis Swaggerty being the most recent example. I mean, this Swaggerty, there was other stuff. There were the health concerns. There was, logjam in the outfield. We could go through a long list, but 2018 first-round draft pick can't hang on to a spot in 2023. That says a lot about where you feel your roster is. So are you going to really infuse any more talent whenever you kind of know who you're going to be pulling from at the major league level for the most part for the next couple years? I don't. This isn't the year. If anything, as crazy as this might sound, I might float a couple guys who are on the 40-man roster but hanging on by a thread. Float it, see if you could package a couple of them and bring back be buyers, for lack of a better way of saying it. Now, controllable players, someone that you have for 2024 as well. But if you could trade outfielder X, I won't say anyone out, but we all know there are a good handful of outfielders in Indianapolis, and there's no way this team could really hang on to all of them. If you want to, flip one or two of them for a team's 5th starter, but is projectable, I don't see how that's a bad idea. I don't see how just finding a way to build that 2024 team at the trade deadline in other ways other than trade expiring contract for prospects because we've seen that for a couple years now. And it worked with Quintana. It worked with Adam Frazier. Frazier wasn't, the expiring contract though. Frazier had been there for a year. He had, next year left on his contract. So really, we could look at all these, 1-year free agents that they signed, and the only major player who has made an impact at the major league level is Johan Oviedo. And we're getting ready for another year where maybe they trade one of those guys. So it isn't the year, I feel like, or this is the year that you clear it with Rich Hill, you clear it with Carlos Santana. If they want to go ring chase, they could go ring chase. That's fine. And full blessing. Go for it. Go get your ring. But they have been very vocal that they like Pittsburgh, that they like this clubhouse. If they want to stay in this clubhouse, honor that. They are a net positive for being those guys in the clubhouse. You can keep them there. That could mean so much more. A handful of wins in 2023 and keep it a good clubhouse and building that culture and having a guy that these young players could, lead on for a little longer, I feel could do just as much, if not more than another random AA reliever has been added to the organization. We're going to take a break. Whenever we come back, we're going to talk some catching. So in not so certain words, or definitive words, I guess I should say, Andy Rodriguez is the Pirates' starting catcher for the rest of this season. We've seen him start 3 of his first 4 games behind the plate since he's been up in the major leagues. He's really, we've seen some, we've seen a little bit of jank, a little bit of what you would expect from a young player, but he is figuring it out, and it's fine. You're going to get some growing pains there. And you know what? He's got a great person to lead on right now in Austin Hedges, who I feel like now that we're in Austin Hedges as the backup mentor, type role, I feel like there's going to be a second half resurgence of appreciation for him. I say this in the nicest possible way, as Hedges has been a very kind person to the media. Not that it matters, whenever you're assessing players, we have jobs, but he's been very kind. He has been a great person to have in that locker room. He's been a great person having, clubhouse meetings and preparing for series. And he does a lot of things so well. And then he picks up a bat and everyone just loathes the guy. I feel like, not that it's, fair to him or, well, I guess you can't say not really fair to him. He kind of hit his way into it. He is the best backup catcher in baseball. He is the best backup catcher in baseball, and he is among the worst as a starting catcher. Is going to be my trade-off there. Because if you could just deal with, oh yeah, the backup catcher, he's not going to hit. That's so much easier to accept. And he's like, but he's so good with the pitching staff, and he's so good at game planning, and he's so good at picking up stuff, and bringing it to meetings, and and that's great. That's literally everything you want from the backup catcher. And then whenever that guy gets, starts 5 days a week, it's like, okay, no, wait a minute, we can't do this all the time here. He's going to be backing up. Andy Rodriguez is going to be starting. And then there's Henry Davis, who I see some of the tools in right field. We know the arm is electric, but we also have seen him not read a bounce well, maybe not field a ball cleanly. There's a couple times. There was one on Friday night against the Angels. Once again, this guy is not a natural right fielder, and I want to just stress, it's okay to just say he's learning the position, because he is. It's not a finished product. It is what it is. We've seen worse right fielders out there. He's better than Yoshi Tsutsugo, if I could evoke a name back there. But it's The guy's not a right fielder, naturally. And that's fine. When is he going to get more time behind the plate? Because as of this recording, we've seen him for one inning back there. And it was one inning that I talked to Jordan Comadina. I wrote this piece for the site during the last road trip. Uh, just talk about all the things that they're doing, they're working on behind the plate, what behind the scenes, what's he, presenting the target the right way, how do you snatch the ball, how do you frame the ball, how do you catch the ball consistently? Believe it or not, that's something that was a bit of a problem in Altoona. So how do you continue to develop that if he's not going to get major league reps? At least not consistent one, because it can't be an inning here, an inning there. I don't think there's a whole lot of. You don't want to take a ton away from Endy, and you can't take that much more away from Austin Hedges the way that's kind of being presented. Shelton mentioned that Hedges could be someone who comes in as a defensive replacement. Maybe it's one of those cases where Davis catches 6 or 7 innings, and if the team's leading, you go to Hedges to finish it off, and that's fine. But he needs bulks of innings and not just random one-offs. If you do think this guy is a major league catcher, which they have insisted time and time again, this guy is going to catch at the major league level, that's great. How do you going to do that whenever you don't get the major league reps? And again, I wrote the piece. Go read it on the site. It literally answers the question, but I'm talking more just big picture. This guy was at Altoona for months this year, absolutely eating Eastern League pitching. He had no chance against him, because you're seeing what he's doing at the major league level. I mean, he's a plus hitter in the major league so far in his first month. He was doing that against Double-A pitching at the beginning of the year. Of course, he was going to just absolutely clobber them, and he was down there because he needed to catch every day. And then the team quickly changed to, look, we just need the bat in the lineup right now. Call him up. We'll put him in right field. We'll figure it out. Okay, I get that. But you can't have 2 months of potential development just whittled down to, oh, he was in Altoona because he needed to get those reps at catcher, and now he's not catching anymore. He needs those reps too. If it's not right now, if they're still working, okay, because they are putting work behind the scenes. That's the one thing I can definitively say right now. There is a lot of work going on behind the scenes. That's good. Continue to grow there. But it can't just be one-off innings, which is really what it's been so far, what they've looked for. And they had one option or one opportunity, and they put him in. It went the way it went. Not that good or that bad. It was literally an inning of catching. Josh Van Meter can do it. Henry Davis can too. So, but if this guy is going to be part of your catching plans in 2024, in 2025, and so on, you got to get reps, especially if, these next 2 months are going to look the way they appear to be shaping up right now, which is not very promising competition-wise. We're maybe not competition-wise, but this team making for the playoffs again, even though they look like it. And I keep going back to April, and man, I think people are going to be tired of hearing about April. I think I'm going to keep bringing it up until the end of the year, if not after, because that really was the tease of what this team could be and where they are here in year 4. We're going to take a break. We got some comments here. I'm going to go through them all. I've been paying attention to you guys. We'll finish it off on a strong note. Welcome back to the Pirates podcast, to be named later, here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. A couple questions here to wrap up the night. For those of you who are hanging out with me on the West Coast late at night, appreciate it, and appreciate everyone who listens on this show whenever it becomes a podcast for the site also. Randy Wagner, what does Endy bring at catcher compared to Henry Davis at catcher? Endy is a much, I don't want to say better, but better. He's more advanced as a receiver, and he has been for some time. There's still, the game planning. There's still the other intangible parts of the position that he's really working on. But whenever we're literally talking about catching the ball and presenting it the right way, Indy is better. That's why he's getting more reps behind the plate right now. And Ryan Little brings up, I don't think we can do it with Andy Haynes. Yeah, yeah, I'm not gonna get into an Andy Haynes off late at night. I've brought this point up a couple times in like live cues. I might have said it here a couple times. I've seen areas of growth with a lot of these players. I've also seen a lot of these players not progress at the way that they should. So I get the frustration with the offense. With the offense, uh, there's some parts that are good. There's some parts that aren't, and these next 2.5 months, I think, are really going to determine what the future is for how this team goes about hitting development. And really, I guess a whole lot's going to be determined in these next 2 months. If they do not go well, it's going to be very interesting. The job security of a couple guys. A couple more here. Jason Reich, are you worried with the K's with Andy? No, not yet. It's been only a handful of games, and yeah, there have been some ugly swings. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He's also, adjusting to major league pitching. That'll happen. Not everyone's going to be a De La Cruz. Just is. Even then, De La Cruz dipped below a 100 WRC plus for a little bit, so it's not always clear. And then any chance Troy gets dealt at the deadline, we're gonna close here. I think there's a pretty good chance with this. Just very, it's more, it's less what I've heard, and it's more just reading the room of where this organization is with first base depth. He's someone who can maybe bring back a little. I mean, I wouldn't expect a huge trade back. The Pirates traded Jack Hartman to get him, who was a single A relief pitcher with a Tommy John surgery. I wouldn't expect a whole lot in the trade, but I definitely would expect him to be dangled out there. It's a way to offload some money. It's a way to maybe bring in a lottery ticket. But then again, like I said in that first segment, you could use the veterans. You could use someone like Ji-Man Choi on this roster for the last couple months of the season. I'll just say it. And with that, we're going to call this an episode. Thank you so much for listening, and for those of you who watched me live on YouTube late this Friday night. So really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll talk again next week.